Signal seekers, this is your wake-up call. You've been hearing it in the noise, seeing it in the static. Are you receiving the frequency? Strange lights, lost places, forgotten stories. The signal has always been there. If you can hear this transmission, you're already part of the signal. Welcome to Backwoods Signal, broadcasting from the edge of reality.
Before there was static attached to this, before I started plotting sightings, before I started looking at disappearances, strange encounters, geology, military installations, or anything else, I drew a map. Well, sort of. I colored in some spaces on a map and drew a line. This was the start of something that I really wasn't expecting. This was the start of understanding that maybe there was something going on here that I really can't explain. And that's what we're going to dive into starting tonight. 5 zones. 5 zones, not on this map. This early map only had 4. Now we have 5. Well, let me get to that. Here's the current map. With 5 zones, not because somebody told me these places were connected, not because a computer generated them, and definitely not because I already knew what the data was going to say. I drew them because after years of looking at strange stories across the country, certain places just seem to keep showing up again and again and again. At first, the zones were basically filing cabinets of weirdness, nothing more. But then I had a question. What happens if I actually put the data on top of them? Would the map survive, or would the evidence destroy it? So that's exactly what I tried to do. I asked the data to destroy my map, and instead, it gave me a much stranger problem. This is Backwoods Signal. Real encounters, real places, real stories. And around here, we don't have to believe every story we hear. We investigate it because sometimes the stories fall apart. Sometimes they're perfectly normal explanations. And sometimes you start putting the dots on a map and realize there's a whole lot more dots than you expected. So here's what we started out with. We started out with 5 zones. And I had reports and reports and reports. And those reports generated from someplace. This is currently roughly the UFO activity layer. And you notice now in the center here, there is an area that is not zoned. We're not going to focus on that yet because that could be a completely different thing going on altogether. What we are going to talk about are the colored areas. Zone 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Tonight, we're only going to dive into Zone 1. But we're going to first discuss the layout. The thing that led me to start wondering what's really going on here. And could this be something? So here we have the UFO activity layer. The high concentration in Zone 1, Zone 2, not so much. I mean, there's sprinkles in the obvious areas of Arizona and Colorado, Utah and Colorado. But when we get to Arizona, New Mexico, not as much as we thought we would find. California, a little bit more in certain areas. But Zone 3 actually ends just south of Mount Shasta. So we're not even considering central and southern at all in California. Zone 4, there's some. Actually, the box covers quite a bit of the activity in Zone 4. I apologize for that. When I was generating this last night, it was getting late. And this image was generated last night, the actual overlay. So there is that. Zone 5, which is really just a new addition and not a determined zone yet. I haven't concreted that zone and said this is definitely Zone 5. This is the potential Zone 5 that we're looking at here from Pennsylvania up through the New England area, the yellow zone there. But Zone 1 is rich all over, as you can tell. And there's some pretty strong evidence there with Zone 1 and Zone 5. So I'm very curious about both of those. Definitely curious about both of those. Now here's the missing person layer. This layer really made me start to raise my eyebrows a little bit. As you can tell, the heart of the country, Texas, up into the Dakotas, and all of this area not zoned yet, strangely enough, is not as lit up here as it was in the UFO activity. But when we get to zone 1, like some of the areas of zone 5, again, pretty strong. Uh, Again, the box on zone 4 is kind of covering it up, but there's quite a bit of activity in zone 4 there. Zone 2, it's a lot more active with missing persons than it was with UFO activity. There's a UFO activity again. So here's the missing person again. So we've got we've actually got quite a bit of activity north of zone 2 also. I may eventually add be adding to zone 2. I'm sorry, I just kind of like, I wasn't, I forgot about all the activity to the north there in Iowa. Iowa may wind up getting added to that after a while. Let me see something right quick. I'm going to switch this one more time. The UFO activity in Iowa is very sparse, but also you got to remember the population in Iowa is a lot different. So then we had geology and mineral layers. Now, here it gets kind of interesting because zone 4, very heavy in the geology and mineral layer map. Zone 1, again, zone 5, very heavy. Zone 2, not looking too shabby there. Again, when you get to the heart of like Texas, up into the Dakotas and Minnesota and so forth, not so much. You notice there's kind of a void there for a lot of stuff. So oddly, some of the stuff that showed up as heavy and intense in the areas that I zoned really surprised me. I was like, okay, so maybe there is something to this. Maybe I'm onto something. And this is where I really started getting interested in advancing the idea of the zones. And I was like, okay, so now I want to run tests. I want to run some hardcore debunking stuff to see if I can debunk these theories and see if maybe I'm wrong about the zones. Maybe there's something about the zones that I just need to break it down into easier to digest chunks of activity and leave it at that. And maybe there's nothing going on in these zones that is different or special that would lead me to something. And let me say something here about this. Like, you got to understand, this is a fluid and active part of my research. And when I say that, what I'm saying is, like, at any time, the evidence may compel me to change my mind about certain zones, about how certain areas are split up, whether zones should expand, decrease, or increase. I mean, there's a lot of things going on here. This is an active, very active investigation or research. So this is not set in concrete. It is fluid. It's very fluid, is what I'm trying to say. So even though what I'm finding now to be true, the research, the data may prove later on to not be so much so. So there may be times when I have to come back and update this, is what I'm saying, because I'm not going to sit here and say this is definitive research and this is how it's going to be and this is the exact data as it is. That's not. That's not really even logical. That's not, I mean, when it comes to the data is fluid. There are things that change all the time. Various influences can change data. For instance, I haven't even gone into, does weather and climate affect any of this? If so, what are the future effects because the climate is changing? Um, there's a lot of questions I still have, a lot of things I haven't put to the test that could drastically change the current hypothesis or theory. So when I'm saying this, when I'm talking about this, please do not get me wrong in believing that I'm saying that this is set in concrete and this is the way it is, because that is completely not what I'm saying. And what we're going to be going over next will kind of set the pace for uh, how I'm going to work with this, and we're going to talk a little bit now about the zones, about the 5 areas here. So I divide the country into 5 areas based on recurring clusters of strange reports and geography surrounding them. Zone 1, which is the zone we're going to be covering tonight, is Kentucky, Tennessee, North Alabama, North Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina, West Virginia, and Ohio. Zone 2 takes us west to Arizona, New Mexico, Utah, Nevada, and Colorado. Zone 3 moves us into Washington, Oregon, and North California, and that could expand. Zone 3 could expand to include Iowa at some point. We'll see. And it could even go farther down into California. Again, like I said, this is very fluid stuff. It's not concrete. Zone 4 covers Wisconsin, Michigan, Illinois, and Indiana currently. And Zone 5, which is a provisional zone right now, covers Pennsylvania and New England. Everything outside of those areas isn't being declared normal. This isn't what this map means. Although I will tell you that as we look at this more and more, you will see that there's more activity in the zoned areas than the areas I have not currently zoned. And by the way, like I said, this is all of this so far is by past investigations, like my information over periods of time, intuition. A lot of things went into the zoning that I've done so far. The zones are simply the areas I've investigated, that we're investigating, you and I. Thinking